Hi, and welcome to SpondyCast, where we bring together the best medical minds, thought leaders, scientists, patients, and caregivers to inform and inspire the spondylitis community. I'm your host, Jill Miller, living my best spa life, knowing that how we meet today has the power to change everything going forward. Hi, and welcome to SpondyCast. Today, our guest is Alex Levine, who owns and operates a virtual personal training business, Alex Levine Fitness, which specializes in one-on-one personal training for those with ankylosing spondylitis, axial spondylitis around the world. He is a certified personal trainer, fitness nutrition specialist, and senior fitness specialist through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. He also holds a master's degree in sports leadership from Northeastern University. And today we are going to talk about physical fitness, spa, and how to keep yourself going, right? So Alex, thank you for joining us.
Jill, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
So can you tell me a little bit about you? Because I know you have a diagnosis, and we're very curious how your journey was and how it affected your initial perception around fitness.
Absolutely, yeah. So diagnosis was actually almost a decade ago now. 25 years old. I'm almost 35. So I've been thinking about it more recently because a decade, I can't believe that much time has passed, first of all. But, my journey kind of started early 20s, like many others. Just kind of started having sciatica, started having the thoracic spine tightness, the neck tightness, and, looking for answers, honestly, for a couple of years. So diagnosed officially at 25. So for about 5 years, I'm trying to figure out, why do I keep getting sciatica? I was an athlete, very active, working in health and fitness since my early 20s. So why am I keep getting sciatica? Sciatica usually comes, I wouldn't think at that age, that often. Every few months I would get it. Also, the tightness just didn't seem like tightness someone would get in the early 20s. So, that's when it all started, just searching for answers. Going to physical therapy off and on for the sciatica, the tightness, and really couldn't figure it out. And of course, during that time, it makes things, the anxiety's ramped up. You're really feeling confused about why you can't get an answer. You're feeling down on yourself, and you really don't know how to move forward with a treatment plan because you have no clue what's going on, other than I was mostly told sports injuries, and then I had to maybe back off of exercise. So years of uncertainty. And it wasn't until I actually injured my hip playing soccer in a kind of adult soccer league when I was 25, injured my hip, got an x-ray, and that x-ray showed SI joint inflammation. So it was kind of out of nowhere when I was officially diagnosed, but I was searching for a long time. So 25 is when the hip injury led to the x-ray, and then it was really right away I was told, we have to look into some things here. You got a lot of inflammation in the SI joints, and then that kind of went down the rabbit hole of the diagnosis officially.
Yeah, how interesting.
Yeah.
And when you were diagnosed, so you were already a fitness trainer?
Yes. I was already my career started in youth sports. I was already in health and fitness. I'd been a trainer for a couple of years. Yeah, already.
And when you were told you had to back off or that it might get worse as time goes on, I've seen some of your videos on YouTube where you talk about that you were told it may have been worse. It may get worse as it goes on, and the way you've sort of hit that head on. But when it was the immediate aftermath of the diagnosis, like physically and emotionally, how did that go?
Yeah, I definitely struggled. The first thing you do is go on Google. You're Googling. I'd never heard of ankylosing. Yeah, Google, which stay off Google.
Yes.
Stay off Google, please. And I think that's a large part of this disease is the worry, the fear about the future. A lot of it is we're told we have to do everything we can health-wise, but a lot of us don't know what that means, where to start. And that's kind of where I was at. I was like, well, I work out a lot, but it didn't seem to be working for me. It was causing more pain. The sciatica wouldn't go away. So, but the initial thoughts were fear. I couldn't believe I had this. And unfortunately, I do think doctors are trying their best. I really think so. Everyone was trying their best with me. but ankylosing spondylitis wasn't on anyone's radar. So how would they, I think it's hard to diagnose this for this reason. And a lot of others see the problems with just getting this diagnosed, and it takes people years of the struggle of trying to figure it out. So initially was fear. And then aside from that was confusion about where do I go from here? I'm being told it's going to get much worse. I'm being told to back off of exercise, but then others are telling me you might be in the best profession for this if you do it the right way, if you're moving daily, if you're active. So I was getting both ends of the spectrum, and I was very confused, to be honest.
I think your sentiment there is shared by a lot of people after diagnosis. So as you had the diagnosis, you continued to work out. What inspired you to shifting to just working with people with SPA?
Yeah, so I went through a period of struggle. A couple things were going on at the same time. I had a shoulder injury that I had to get surgery for, and that was kind of before the diagnosis. So after I was diagnosed, I was actually recovering from my shoulder injury, which I had a lot of problems with, probably because of ankylosing spondylitis and just the overall joint pain. So I was recovering from shoulder surgery. I was dealing with sciatica. So I was in a pretty tough place, and I honestly was just trying to figure out what to do, what type of exercises to do. And this, for about a year, I really wasn't having a hard time exercising correctly, and it was a struggle. So after kind of a year, I decided clearly I have to do things differently. I need to forget about what I learned in fitness, like that nothing was working. I have to forget that. I have to forget about working out means you do an hour, you do maybe a certain amount of exercises for 10 repetitions, and that's it. That's what exercise is. I had to forget about that. I had to say, what movements just feel good for me? What movements feel good? What can I just do to get energy out? At the time, it was kind of like forgetting ankylosing spondylitis. How can I just get healthy and get off the couch, get out of bed, and stop worrying about the future? How can I just find any way to get going? So that's kind of how my approach started, of doing bizarre stretches at home, using resistance bands, like using really light weights because I was sick of causing more pain. So that's kind of how my approach started. But it wasn't after a period of some real struggle and questioning, can I be in fitness? Can I even be in this career? Does this make sense for me?
Right. And would you be open to walking us through some of your foundational exercises?
Yeah, my foundational exercises, I think I'm really the only one that does them because they're very unique to me, and they're very unique to the struggle I was in, and how really, the condition I was in was pretty bad. So it was really like, I don't even care how these movements look. I don't care that they're not a full workout. I have to break up it was more about breaking up tension and kind of freeing up the tension in the body. So a lot of kind of supported stretching using a wall, a lot of openers using a wall where I could really focus on the most comfortable range of motion, the smallest range of motion where I wasn't causing pain. And again, this didn't seem like an exercise, honestly, at the time. It was just like, let's just move through some things so I can feel good. So I use the wall a lot. If anyone, follows me online, my kind of foundation is that stretching program, because I believe in the overall approach. I believe strength is crucial, mobility, the postural stuff, but I really think it starts with loosening up if someone's dealing with tightness. There are some folks that have hypermobility or they aren't as tight as others, but for the most of us, we're dealing with some pretty extreme tightness that can limit our ability to do other stuff, to play sports, to strength train. So I like to start with.
All right, let's do a couple. You're going to have to walk through so people can visualize.
We can do a couple, absolutely. So a few that I love to do are using the wall, like I said, where we're using the wall for support. Both hands are on the wall.
Okay.
So
for anybody listening, we're really doing this.
Yeah, we're really doing this right now. Even though I have headphones connected to my computer, so I can't go to the wall, but Jill will go to the wall. So what I like to do, both hands are on a wall about shoulder height. So you're about shoulder width apart, and your hips are going to stay forward. We're not going to rotate the hips. And all we're going to do is open up one arm. So the right arm is going to open up until you feel the chest, upper back, 1-2 seconds, then you'll bring it back and reset. So we're really moving through a range where you're feeling the stretch briefly. We're not kind of torquing through that low back. We're not messing with SI joints. We're really just moving through those postural muscles. And I like to go to even the most minimal stretch, really in the beginning, so we can get a feel for it. We can loosen up. And I like to alternate here to really open up the chest and open up those postural muscles, but without compromising the low back, without compromising the hips. So this kind of wall opener is a great one, and you can really kind of move through it at your own pace. And I started doing stuff like this because for some, it's hard to get on the ground. It's hard to stretch in certain positions. So let's find any way we can get into some comfortable stretching. Jill's doing it right now, as no one can see this, but I can see it, and it's looking good. But using the wall, I would do a supported downward dog also. So I used to love the downward dog on the floor, the traditional yoga downward dog, but it was too much pressure on the shoulder, on the wrist. So I started doing it using a wall, kind of the same setup as the other one, hands or shoulder height, feet about hip width. And I would just slowly sink back so I could get my arms overhead and I could stretch out my back. And again, it's not putting as much pressure on the wrists, on the shoulders, on the hips. So I would work all of these stretches like this, nice and long through the spine. And I started thinking about, let's lengthen the body in kind of the first step, the most comfortable way possible for me. So the wall became kind of my tool to get going. Yeah, I would use, I would work on some postural stuff, which can get extremely tight. So I would get my back comfortably into a wall. Low back would really be gently touching, core tight. And I would work on the alignment with the feet a couple inches away from the wall. And then I would start working on wall slides up the wall to break up tension in the back. But, the wall.
Great. I've been doing, okay, so describe what I'm doing because.
Yes, Jill is doing these right now. Her back is comfortably into the wall, which is going to look different for everyone. Some people, it's just too tight and they have to start off the wall a little bit. But Jill's finding a range of motion that fits her, where her elbows and her hands are as close to the wall as comfortable, and she's driving up the wall as her core is engaged. So as her mid and lower back are into the wall. So she's breaking up a lot of tension in the back, but at her own pace.
So what I love about these is one of the things I think a lot of people with AS find hard is I'm now doing this, I'm touching just below my trap, like what we all think are our traps, what we all know are our traps. And I think there's this weakness, and those wall push-ups help. They help with that. I don't know, is it like a mid trap or a lower?
Yeah, kind of right between the shoulder blades.
Right. And we get weak, and then we everything folds in. They give you a lot of overhead mobility.
Yeah. So those things to open up the back became kind of my first steps at just restoring a little bit of movement with breaking up tension. Because kind of other things weren't working for me. I saw the benefit in other things because I would try some stuff, but everything didn't work. Some of it worked. So I started taking the sum of it and made it into my own little program, like the postural stuff and the stretching. And then that gave me an idea. How can I bring this throughout fitness, and how can I use similar techniques to loosen up?
Yeah, and you do also some morning stretches, I think, that are awesome as well.
Yeah,
and I think most of us have that morning stiffness.
Yeah, and my routine kind of started in the morning because that's when I struggled the most with the stiffness in the back. Just, unfortunately with AS, you go to sleep and you might feel a little better. And then you wake up and it's like back to square one. So a lot of this is, we got to keep doing this. And I really try to take that into effect. The consistency, the sustainability, and this is what for my clients, this is one of the main things I focus on. What workouts can we do weekly? It's not about just doing one workout and then you're too sore. What happens is a lot of people feel pain the next day. After a workout, it might feel good, but then the next day they feel pain. So I really want to take into account, how do we feel during, how do we feel after, and are we progressing properly? Are we going towards our goal, or are we stuck somewhere? Are we stuck in the same place? So I really started to try to pay attention to how I felt, the morning stuff. I wanted a routine I could do most days of the week. And a routine I knew helped me. I wasn't guessing about different exercises, I knew these movements help me. I can keep progressing them over time.
And that's a good point, the progressing over time. So especially when you've been active and then you've got all of a sudden a diagnosis, and I think you mentioned it, you want to just do what you've always done, and our bodies don't decide that's not going to be the case. So I know in yoga, they always say it doesn't matter how far you go, you still get the same benefit, and you get further in time. So do you start very slowly generally with clients and then move?
Very slowly, and even slower than slowly. Because I've had clients, unfortunately, that have gotten injured at physical therapy. And maybe the program was going well, but then they were progressed too quickly. So I've tried to really start slowly, and it's not a knock on my clients, because I believe that they can get strong and flexible and feel better, but it's more my approach. I want to make sure it feels good the whole time. I don't want any kind of knocks in the road where we have to take a step back. I never want to cause an injury. And unfortunately, I've heard this a lot. People get injured at rehab, doing rehab exercises.
Yeah.
So I take it really, really slowly. And sometimes we stick to that foundation for a longer period to make sure they're feeling good, and to really just make sure the body, you were activating all these muscles before we're trying different stuff. Let's get a good base.
Yeah.
First.
I think that's because you have to activate the big muscle groups and the small.
Everything. Yep.
As you build everything, especially I think people who have joint pain, that strengthening the small muscles, am I on the right path?
Absolutely. There? And that's one thing I struggled with. It was like, I feel pretty strong, like doing a regular press or a regular pull, but man, my hips are really weak. My glutes were incredibly weak, just doing core stuff. And it all makes sense for what I was dealing with. My back was really weak, just the postural stuff. I could just feel my body wanted to cave forward because of the inflammation. So I realized, let's start with the smaller muscles. Let's start with, maybe the clamshells, the bridges, the rotator cuff. So those exercises, I really saw fitness differently, because I realized this is going to have to be a different approach than, I want to get in shape, I'm just going to go to the gym. No, this has to be a little differently. This has to be really unique to each person.
Yeah, I think you're right in that there's a lot of elements, it seems, in your approach that pull in a little bit of yoga or Pilates and some strength training. And but what do you do? So say you're working with a client and you're sailing along and they're just everything's going okay, and then the flare hits.
Yep.
What do you recommend there?
Yeah, so firstly, I like to prepare people for this, actually. I like to tell people when they're feeling good, when they're feeling bad, I like to bring some balance to it, because I've dealt with this. Felt really good after a couple months, and then out of nowhere, it makes no sense. Sciatica hits, maybe just because of the way my body is now, the SI joint stuff, and maybe you feel a little more tightness due to stress, it could be anything. But I like to prepare people for this, because even when they're feeling good, I don't want to depress them, but I want to say, let's find some balance here. This might happen again, but we know how to deal with it. We know that we can get better after the flare. We know the flare might not be there forever. So I really like to take it all into consideration in a positive way, in a way that says we can get through it. Look, we've gotten through it here. You're feeling good. You felt good for this amount of time. And then next time, hopefully the flare is less and we can keep progressing. But first,
but
it's just prepare.
You don't pause. You wouldn't stop moving or working out. You would maybe go back to that earlier mode, or do you just pause?
So that's a very interesting conversation and topic, and that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. And I think that's the unique aspect of ankylosing spondylitis, and maybe why folks have problems doing certain exercises or working with certain people who don't know about ankylosing spondylitis. And it's hard because you wouldn't really know unless you have it, that sometimes you just feel a lot tighter, sometimes you get flares. But this is why I try to keep track of everything. Really, everything we do, I keep track of how the person feel. So that's when the flare happens, I know, are they responding well to this sort of movements, or are they not? Is this movement too much? So it's really different. I've seen just different for everyone. Some folks, can kind of walk it off, right? And they know that if I just get moving a little bit, the sciatica will go away. But some folks, it can be too much and they need that rest day. And then we get back to where we were. But honestly, it's been different for everyone. And my goal has been find out what's best for this person. How do they respond over time? And I do think, how can we keep going in any manner though? So if someone's dealing with something, for most of us, rest isn't the best option. For some, yes, but I think for most of us, there needs to be some sort of movement, because unfortunately what happens is if you rest, then the rest of the body gets tight. So then we're dealing with,
Maybe it's semantics. I think rest is good. I think excessive lack of mobility, like lack of movement, is bad.
Yeah.
Because we all need the rest.
No, the rest is good. No, yeah. The rest is very important, and I think that's kind of what I'm trying to, this is why it's such a complex topic, because everyone responds completely differently. And some people definitely need the rest and need to let something heal. But my goal has been to pinpoint exactly, how can we make this better?
Where's the balance?
Where's the balance? And how can we make this better over time so we don't keep coming into the same kind of falls with the flares? But really, at this point, I've worked with a lot of people with ankylosing spondylitis.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people. I've connected with hundreds of people with AS, and it's completely different for everyone.
Yeah. The one thing was, I had an epiphany we had a physical therapist on, and he was talking about people with AS. We tend to have, like, in our pelvic or SI region, we have a kind of a double whammy, because we are typically tipped back and forward. So we have tight hip flexors and tight hamstrings, which is unique. And at the time I was trying to find my core. So how important, and once I realized that, I was like, oh, wow, I do have core muscles. Like, they're not great, but like, they're there. Because I think a lot of us we want to get the core activated, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how important the core is in outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that podcast with the physical therapist, I suggest people to listen to that one. It was a really great one from a physical therapy standpoint on how to progress properly. I really enjoyed, his approach. That's a really, everyone should look back at that episode, especially people that are looking for a physical therapist for AS. It was a great guidelines on what to look for and how to progress things properly. But, so the core is crucial, but like you said, it can be hard to get into it. And the hamstrings are one of the, you can kind of say everything's tight. Looking at the spectrum of AS, everything just kind of seems tight, but the hamstrings are one of the things that I've seen the most of. Just, they can get incredibly tight, especially with the thoracic spine tightness. Those generally go together, where bending becomes very difficult. So the tightness can really hamper our ability to work the core, and that's what a lot of people struggle with. They're trying to do, even rehab exercises like the bird dog, the dead bug, all these core stability stuff, but their low back aches. They're finding a lot of low back pain and SI joint pain. So my first steps are to find kind of the most comfortable position that someone can get into to just engage the glutes, engage the core without, probably without twisting in the beginning, I'm not the biggest fan of crunches. There's a million variations of crunches, but I'm not the biggest fan just based off of the rounding of the spine. And I do think it can be good to round the spine and work things like the cat-cow and I think it's important to get spinal mobility, but in the beginning, I think staying away from crunches and focusing more on strengthening the core and more of a stable base where the low back's protected.
So one trick I found was, like, more that shoulders down and, like, bring your sternum up. When I did that, I was like, oh, that changes things in my SI joint. But what do you, so I know cat-cow is great, and moving slowly. What other types of core engagement? Are you more like a whole body workout?
Yeah, so my stuff is like I was just saying, the dead bug and the bird dog are kind of core stability, where we're focused on how can we keep a neutral spine, how can we not arch the back, but work the core in a way where we're protecting the low back. So I like doing stuff on the ground to start, even just pelvic tilts, where you're
Mhm.
feeling those muscles tuck under, so you're really tucking your low back into the ground, squeezing your belly button towards your spine, really squeezing your belly button towards the ground to engage that low back into the ground, and working on the alignment first, and really just working on squeezing the glutes, squeezing the core, and getting your back into the ground. And a lot of people have a hard time doing this. And one of the problems is a lot of people have a hard time on the ground. So you can do this against the wall too, with the feet a couple inches away, where you're trying to gradually tuck your low back into the wall. And again, squeezing the abs, pulling the belly button in towards the spine, squeezing the glutes. So just starting here so you can find a good base here in a good position where the core is engaged without moving out of it first, just finding that good engagement.
Awesome. Uh, so how does someone distinguish post-workout, maybe muscle pain from flare pain?
Yeah, this is an important one because we want, again, we want that sustainable approach, and this can be one of the hardest things to determine. So firstly, this is why I like starting with really short workouts. Um, Even just 5 minutes of a couple movements that feel good, just to make sure you respond well to it. And just so we're not second guessing, all right, what movement do we think caused the pain? So we can really gradually start out with these shorter workouts, just so we get a feel for things. And even if it doesn't feel like a lot, that's what can get you there long term. Just making sure you're responding well. And then you can kind of have more of an idea, did these movements work for me? Did these exercises work for me? But I think that's where breaking it down into smaller goals in the beginning is the best way forward.
You also are a nutritionist, yes?
Yes, I have through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, I'm a nutrition specialist. Yes.
So do you recommend any high-level approach in nutrition for clients who are starting down an exercise path?
Absolutely. Nutrition, I'll give my same spiel about nutrition as I do with fitness. Different for everyone, completely different. But there's definitely trends that we're seeing with inflammation, with different foods. And I think for everyone, the processed stuff, we can try to stay away from the sugars. We can try to stay away from, I think reducing all of that can really be beneficial, because we're thinking inflammation. Any way we can reduce inflammation is going to be beneficial. Nutrition is one of those things that a lot of people will argue about with AS, because I think it can be hard when people make the nutritional changes and don't feel better. So it can kind of become, what's the point? But I really see nutrition in a couple different ways. I think for me, my nutritional approach helped me because it gave me more energy. So I was able to wake up, work out, move better because of the way I was eating. And I think healing the gut, you can't go wrong. With AS in the gut, we know there's a lot of overlap. So it's important to find ways to heal the gut and pay attention to are certain foods making you just not feel good. This can be hard to notice unless you get rid of something for a week, for 2 weeks. But I do think nutritionally can have a huge impact. And, even if you don't really notice a difference, maybe it gives you a little energy. Maybe you can take that and you can kind of work out easier. But for me, I think it just starts with the processed foods, the breads, the pastas, the sugars, all that stuff can be kind of paying attention to that stuff. And for me, I've always looked to more of a paleo, keto approach, but that's what worked for me. Just sometimes intermittent fasting over the years helped me just reduce inflammation and just feel a little looser in the morning to do the workout.
Yeah, as I sit here rubbing the sugar from last night out of my joints and my fingers. So if someone is newly diagnosed, and maybe they've been on a fitness journey, maybe they have not previously, what advice would you give to someone overwhelmed by the idea of starting down a fitness journey?
Absolutely. And this is where I was at. I talked about this in the beginning. I struggled, and why I feel for these people is I was in fitness and I struggled. So I can't imagine not even knowing the best workouts or exercise to do and having the struggle. I was in fitness. I had the background and I still struggled and had no clue where to start. So I feel for these folks, but take my story, and I really talk about this often. I started from the bottom with this. Really couldn't do anything, crawling around, limping, not wanting to do anything, staying in bed a lot, just dealing with all that stuff that a lot of us deal with. So I believe that everyone can get on a good approach fitness wise. And the beauty of it is there's many ways to work out. And this is what I kind of realized early on. Early on, I thought there's only one way to work out, because everyone's saying the best workouts are, the bench press, the squat, the deadlift, the pull-ups. That's how you get strong. But those are great movements. I love them. But for AS, we have to kind of sometimes get rid of that and think about, how can I just get moving in a way that works for me? And then we can maybe get to those things later on. So I really think there's an approach for everyone. I've been amazed at some of my clients who really were struggling, newly diagnosed, so tight. And I felt for them because I could feel it. I was there myself. And we started with really smaller goals, just wanted them to feel better. And I've seen incredible improvements. So the hope is something that everyone can hold on to, in my mind.
I love that. So aside from visiting a place like Levine Fitness on Instagram or YouTube, are there any books or programs that were particularly helpful for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So when I was in the struggle, I was kind of looking for anyone else who was struggling in fitness. So I was looking, even not AS related, I was looking for folks. How do I work out? I talked about, I had a shoulder injury. How do I lift weights with a shoulder injury? How do I play basketball with hip pain? I was really looking for people that also were just struggling in fitness. They were eager to work out. They were eager to get going, but they were just struggling. So there's so many channels now for fitness and exercise, and sometimes it can be too much. But if we can kind of harness that a little bit, look everywhere. Look YouTube, online. Obviously, the SAA has great exercise stuff. Yoga for AS, friends of mine, they have incredible stuff, and they have a very similar approach to me regarding fitness and the progression and starting out in the most comfortable range of motion, and different for everyone. Even though they're focused on yoga, they're focused on, this is going to be yoga for you. This is not going to be overall yoga that everyone should just do yoga. This is going to be very specific to you. So I love their approach. Sandra Voss, who started Spondy Strong with me,
Love her.
Sandra's the best. Check
Yes.
out Sandra, another yoga instructor. So, if you're really struggling, find others with AS. When I was diagnosed, I knew nobody with AS, and I think it really, it's good to find others who are dealing with what you're dealing with. Find others with AS, but also there's so many different approaches out there. Don't give up. If one thing doesn't work, don't give up. That's been my thing. There's a million ways we can put together workouts, fitness, and there's other ways to think about health and fitness too. Meditation, mindfulness. What became my thing was when we talked about flares and what do we do when we're dealing with the flare fitness wise. And what I started doing is I would go to the gym and just use the sauna. And I would just have in my mind, I would say, just keep doing anything. Just keep doing anything. I can't sit at home with this. So that's kind of what I was touching on earlier. Try to find anything health-wise that you can attach yourself to when you're struggling. Meditation is a big one for me too. So there's many ways we can look at this.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So before I let you go, do you have a final message of hope that you want to share? You've shared a lot of hope and encouragement. So I hope I didn't tap you dry. But any single message that you want to land this on?
Yeah, hope has always been my thing. The motivation that goes up and down. That's kind of been my story because I still deal with that. Sometimes one of the hardest things with AS is, say you've done everything, medication, if you're on medication, fitness, exercise, nutrition, and what if that flare happens after doing everything? That can be a low point because you're like, what else can I do? So that's something I went through for a couple of years. What else can I do? I've done everything. But that's just a temporary thought. And then I try to back off a little bit, think of where I am now compared to where I started, and try to see that balance. The balance. It's all about the balance.
The balance.
The balance. But
Find the middle road.
Keep hope is, and keep searching. Keep searching. Don't give up. There's again, a lot of folks, when they got injured in physical therapy, they wanted to give up. But
yeah,
keep searching for any way possible to just keep moving, keeping that healthy mindset. Things can get better. They will get better. Just keep searching.
I think we need to make T-shirts that say "Hope can actually be a strategy."
Hope is a good one. I love hope. I mean,
I do too. I have endless hope for everything. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing, and I'm really excited to continue to watch you on your channels. It's been great for me, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening.
Jill, thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Later.
SpondyCast was made possible by donations from the Spondylitis Association of America's individual members and our show's corporate sponsor, AbbVie. Since our founding in 1983, the Spondylitis Association of America has been the face, voice, and leading nationwide nonprofit educating, empowering, and advocating for people living with spondyloarthritis. Through our extensive work with patients, the medical community, and partners, we provide information and resources to help people impacted by the disease live better lives and champion research to find a cure.